Mr. Quraishi, good evening and thank you very much for your time. First things first, there are many people who are calling today's verdict historic. Is that your view as well? And why is the timing important?
Well, the timing is important in the sense that general elections are quite close. It's about a month away. And at the same time, don't forget that the case has been pending for 6 years. And it was not very fair of the Supreme Court to keep it hanging and pending for 6 long years. But as they say, better late than never. They've come out with a brilliant judgment, a historic and landmark judgment. And I salute the Supreme Court. And I must say that my faith and trust in the Supreme Court has gone up sky high.
Okay, so you're calling this a landmark judgment, but the government has argued and the BJP argues that the electoral bonds were actually bought in to eliminate black money from elections. So the money that was used in elections would be clean. What is the problem in that?
No, not at all. The government has been misleading from the beginning. Let me tell you, if you recall, the scheme was introduced through the budget, which should not have happened. But in any case, I was hearing the budget speech on television in 2017 when finance minister made came out with two very important sentences which were music to my ears. His first sentence was that without transparency of political funding, free and fair elections are not possible. That is exactly what we have been saying. Now, why does a donor want to keep it a secret? That is something which I have been writing about from day one, because we felt that he wants to hide the quid pro quo. There is no free lunch, as they say. If somebody donates 5 crores, 10 crores, 20 crores, they want something in return. And what will that be? A contract, a license, or maybe a big loan, which, as you know, they regularly run away to other countries. So some of these things would have happened. That's why they wanted secrecy. They wanted to hide the quid pro quo. People wanted transparency. Now, whose the want and whose desire is more sacrosanct? The people's or the donors? The donors have been donating for 70 years. There was no problem. So therefore, the whole thing was phony, and the bluff has been called out. My only regret is that it took 6 long years. Why was it not taken up immediately when the case was brought before the Supreme Court?
But Mr. Quraishi, there is something to be said about laws being applied retrospectively, right? And the Supreme Court has spoken about that as well. Corporate donors are now saying we donated under the protection of a law that guaranteed us secrecy. If that guarantee of secrecy wasn't there, we would not have donated. Now, okay, you scrap electoral bonds, you scrap the scheme. But why are you taking away that cloak of secrecy from us and making our names public? Why implement it retrospectively?
Well, corporates may make that silly mistake. They can go to the court, but at the same time, the court has the fact that courts took 6 long years to sit on it, and after hearing the argument for several days, they reserved the judgment and they wrote the judgment after the due consideration for 3 months, more than 3 months, and all 5 have come to a unanimous conclusion. It will not be easy to upturn the judgment, their own judgment, on the basis of these frivolous arguments. And in fact, that will only confirm that they had things to hide. Why were they funding? What, in fact, when the information is revealed to the public, I'm sure there will be people who are waiting with bated breath to microscopically examine who donated and who are the donors who are under different kinds of intelligence and the agencies' pressures. So the quid pro quo and the fears and the threats and all that was being speculated will now come out in the open, and transparency was the key word used by the Supreme Court repeatedly. So democracy thrives in transparency, and that has been restored, and anybody who challenges it, well, I think will make a fool of himself.
My last question to you, and I ask you this question because this is a question that is hanging in the air. Can the government, now we understand this is a constitutional bench verdict, but can the government bring in an ordinance now to circumvent the surgical strike right ahead of elections?
Think so. I don't think the government is smart enough to understand this. This is a decision of the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court. So very casually, it is not some small court giving some casual decision. This is a considered opinion, a constitutional judgment of the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court. So the overturning it by an ordinance, I think that will be the gravest mistake the government will even consider doing.